Just tell us a little bit about how you became involved with WeWork, WeLive.
Sure. Most recently I was a software entrepreneur, and about a year ago I sold the company that I had started, and a friend in Boston invited me to come over and talk to the folks at WeWork, and just that it was an exciting moment in the company where they're really starting to grow, and thought it'd be a rich place to kind of join the team and learn and be part of something, pretty sort of profound in terms of the impact on how people work and live and so forth.
Angela Fox, you have a very prominent job here. You are CEO of Crystal City Bid. So thank you for being with us. And you actually live here, by the way. Tell us about living here.
Already?
Very brief.
Very brief. So I am Angie Fox, and I'm the President and CEO of Crystal City Business Improvement District, and my job is to transform the whole Crystal City experience and make it appetizing for people like you to come here for events, to live here in Crystal City, to enjoy all the things that we offer. And I moved to WeLive on April 9th. So I love it. It's very interesting. My biggest advocate for moving here is my almost 13-year-old son, who's also supposed to be here but is hiding out somewhere. So he may show up later and you can hear from him as well if you want.
Good. How are you as a neighbor? Are you difficult to live with? I mean, you are the CEO.
So are you asking my son, or are you asking maybe a little more difficult for him? I have enjoyed meeting all of the people that are living, the we people as we say, in WeLive so far. I've got great neighbors. I needed to borrow something one night, and it was like right next door, and then somebody else needed a Mac charger, and I happened to have an old Mac charger, and I gave it to him. So I mean, there's this really sense of people wanting to get to know each other, and we're all kind of in this sort of experimental thing together, which is really cool.
I love this. We share everything but underwear. It's great. Also tonight we are here thanks to ARLnow.com. They're an incredible website. Hopefully y'all are on. If you're not, check out ARL Now. They have breaking news on everything Arlington County, and some good dirt too. If there's someone naked in your neighborhood, you'll know about it. And our partner tonight, Renato, we have to thank you so much for being involved. So Dave, we were talking about your interesting history, and I was learning today that you actually worked in the movie business prior to coming here. Okay, elaborate. What were you doing? And do I hear something about you produced a film with Donnie Wahlberg?
I wrote a film with Donnie Wahlberg, yeah.
Oh my God, he was on my wall for so many years. I made out with that poster so many times. And you got to see the real deal.
Awkward, yeah. And then about 10 years after that movie, I wrote and directed a movie with Joey McIntyre too. So I got 2 new kids in my my IMDb page.
Oh my God. The envy of so many women. You had like access to the boy banders. But what was this film? Tell us more. Here, I'm going to give you the mic.
Sure. When I was about 20, 21, I sold the script for a movie that was called Southie. It was about South Boston. Donnie was in it, Amanda Peet, Rose McGowan, Will Arnett, a bunch of people. It's a pretty terrible movie, to be honest. But it was a first project and opened a bunch of doors, and then I spent the next kind of 6, 7 years writing for different studios, and went on to do some other plays and movies and that kind of thing.
Okay, so tell us a little bit more about how you made the transition from the movie biz to WeWork.
Yeah, there's a few things in there, but the interesting thing, at least from my point of view, is that I had this. I got really sick of the movie business. I got really burnt out on it because it's kind of not a great business, and I was kind of thinking, what do I want to do next? And I started to meet all these tech entrepreneurs, and I had this sort of realization that all the things I had been doing in the film business were transferable entrepreneurial skills. So I had been raising money, I had been building teams, I had been bringing product to market, I had been negotiating all these complex rights agreements, and sort of crafting these narratives, all things that you do as a founder, entrepreneur, etc. And so that's kind of how I came to the tech entrepreneurship world, and from there, got to know the WeWork folks and WeLive folks.
This is kind of a question for both of you. So you're obviously here tonight with WeLive, and you're overseeing this project. Tell us about who lives here at WeLive, and who do you want to live here?
Well, I think, I mean, interested to hear your answer to this too. I think it's a community that sort of self-selects for people who really value the idea of community and value the idea of experience much more so than sort of the idea of things, you know? I think it's interesting, I find myself in this conversation a lot where we're talking about this abstract thing that really has no inherent meaning called a square foot, as though like we want to build our lives around this thing called a square foot, you know, where we can put more stuff. And the WeLive concept is very simple. It's like, no, let's organize a way of making a life in the city on a different value, which is experience and community and connectedness. And that's who's living here, is people who opt in for that. And that's not, you know, all one age group or one professional class or anything. It's really more of a belief system. Do you think?
I think it's a really good space for people in transition. I think that's sort of a new kind of market, if you will. From my standpoint, you know, I'm an asset light, I've heard you use that word, person, and you know, the number one question ever asked me is, you know, how many square feet is your place? And I actually have no idea. And the terminology we use is very different. You know, it's a 3-bed, but I don't have a 3rd bed. I use that as my closet, so I have the most enviable closet in WeLive. And I actually did bring some furniture. I didn't, even though the place isn't furnished, I brought some of my own furniture, but mostly I put some things in storage, which if this had happened a little sooner in transition, I wouldn't have had furniture, so if we could have just been this, you know, 1 year sooner. But I certainly, from my standpoint, I'm a very experiences-oriented person, but I've been building for 10 years, which is kind of amazing when you think about it, sort of this whole different experience of what Crystal City is. You know, one of the premises for me is, you know, when I was I'm a recovering electrical engineer, that's not nearly as interesting as a movie producer. Though I was very involved in the arts, which is kind of how I ended up doing this. But you know, this is an area where you can spend your life on the road. And I was in an internet tech incubator out in Reston. There was nothing you could walk to. You had to get there by car. I know that Metro is going now. And it was all meant to sort of have these collisions of these tech companies come together. And that didn't happen in that way because you had your silo. Again, your experience was very much I get there and I leave. And so when you think about what we've been building in Crystal City, we don't want you to spend your life on the road. It's one of the most accessible neighborhoods in the world. We have an airport that you can walk to. But we have all kinds of events and activities, great school systems in Arlington so that you can start to rethink how you live your life. Is it a mansion in Ashburn where you see your kids for the last 20 minutes of the day, which is the worst time to see your kids? You know, you maybe mow your lawn on the weekend, or you actually have a smaller amount of space. You have a 5K that you can run every Friday in April. There's free yoga on Monday mornings. There's all kinds of things going on around you that you can enjoy if you choose. Or not, you can go to Costco in 20 minutes versus 4 hours on a weekend because it's right here. Or you can fly out of Nashville Airport. It's all right here, great access. And then you're really kind of actually enjoying your life versus thinking about what you'll do when you retire or you have enough so that you can, you know, shrink your square foot and come move here anyway. So, and I do believe the youngest tenant of WeLive just walked in the room. Tatton, where are you? You stand up real quick and wave. Yep, there he is. Yeah, and he was he's a big reason why I moved here. His school is walking distance right over here, and Arlington has great schools. But the community space, I mean, he camps out with the guys, and there he is, and he's really enjoying it. And when I mentioned the concept to him, he was relentless about wanting to move here. So.
I'm going to split hairs with Angie on vocabulary. So we don't think of the people in WeWork and WeLive as tenants. We think of them as members. And, you know, everything is very... we're really, that means a lot to us. The vocabulary is sort of an expression of the belief system and sort of the vision of what it is that we're building and what we're offering people. So just for what it's worth.
You guys have both hit on, you've already touched on some things that make WeLive very different from your traditional apartments. Anything else though? I mean, obviously, a lot of free things that you can take advantage of, but what specifically is different than your traditional old apartment building?
Well, Tiffany, who's one of our guests here tonight, we were chatting earlier, and I was saying I think one of the really interesting things is, so, you know, we think around space and how the design of space helps people sort of bump and connect. And then there's a layer of kind of like thinking about the staff and how the programming activates the space. And then there's the layer of how the members themselves start to activate the space and create potluck dinners and things like that. And then there's this layer on top of that, which is sort of the digital layer. And, you know, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you experience that sort of as somebody who's living here.
So from the digital layer, you're talking about the app.
Yeah.
So one of the beauties, there's an app for that, right? And so we have the WeLive app, and it'll say, Susie has buzzed your building. It's National Grilled Cheese Day. Who knew? Come to the kitchen. We've got grilled cheese. Now I've had dinner, and I'm not ready for. I don't need a grilled cheese, but it's we walk downstairs, and people are sitting there hanging out, sipping wine. I had a very funny experience actually. So the first day I moved in, I'll tell a story. First day I moved in, it's 5:45 a.m. and I'm going to walk to the yoga class right around the corner. And usually I'm driving, and so now it's like amazing. I'm still late, even though I don't build in time for commute because it's just I'm not used to it. I just literally have to walk 2 buildings over. So I open my door and there's a man standing there in his underwear, and I'm like, oh God. And he's panicked because I didn't know the trash room was across from the hall from me. Literally, I'd been there one day, and so he had an issue with his dog, and so he's panicked, and so then he scurries off, sorry, and then he goes off. So then, I'm like, look out the hallway, and then I go walking down, and so then I go to my yoga class, and then that night was the grilled cheese day, and so I see the guy fully clothed standing there with a bottle of wine. So I pick up a glass and I walk over and I say, well, since I've seen you in your underwear, I guess you should pour me a glass of wine. So, I mean, totally just being funny and sort of getting to know people, but it's like that's not normally the experience that you would have. But I mean, it's fun and it's different. So, but because of this app, you can find out like, hey, does anyone have this Mac charger? Like, and it was funny because I was staring at this old Mac Air charger, and I think, oh, I missed the electronics recycling program that we did this year. And then somebody says, hey, does anyone have this? And I happen to have it, and there I went. So, I mean, those kinds of things, it's really a good way to communicate. I mean, I was in a sorority house at Georgia Tech, and we didn't communicate like this. I mean, it was, you yell, you put notes or things in the refrigerator or whatever, but it's a really nice way to figure out what's going on, and you can opt in or not.
I mean, I can tell you what I personally, love so much about working with this company is it's just a pure learning culture. It's just a pure, we have strong beliefs, and we try to be thoughtful about taking action on those beliefs, but we know going in that we're not going to be perfect. And so when we think about this building and the other initial WeLive as experiments, it's just, let's see what we learn. Let's see, what, like you gave me a great piece of feedback last week, which is, it's great, you have a bathroom in your unit, but maybe there should be a little powder room near the common space. We didn't contemplate that in our designs, or maybe we chose not to do it that way. So little things that you learn about how the space flows and what members prefer, and of course we get tons and tons of data on what they actually use, and the data is a real great sort of learning mechanism as well.
Angela, you've kind of elaborated on, and by the way, she wants a bathtub as well. You can have that. Do any of the units have bathtubs?
No.
Is that to come? Here's some feedback.
Well, I'm not sure if it will come or not, but I would say that there is actually, and when hopefully most of you folks will take a walk around and tour, and really interested to hear what you think, but the bathrooms were designed to be quite spacious because our company has its roots in New York, and so anyone who has lived in New York as a 20-something or 30-something has had this experience of a teeny tiny bathroom. And so you can live in the city and have a bathroom is actually quite a luxurious thing to have a good space there. So there are no bathtubs, but the bathrooms are spacious.
That's right. You're not like living in an RV, which happens in New York. You feel like you're using the bathroom and then there's the shower. You sort of talked about why you decided to move in here, but do you want to kind of discuss more specifically on a personal level why you chose that? I mean, you're a CEO, you're a mom. It seems like an unlikely choice.
So I had a great apartment over in Clarendon it literally has 2 stories, and you could enter straight into my apartment from Clarendon Boulevard. So it was very private. It felt like a home. I'd been there for almost a year, and the lease was coming up, and I just was not ready to sign a lease again. And to not do that, they wanted $600 more a month. And my son is in school here. He's with me 50% of the time. He's with his dad 50% of the time. We've been doing this for 7 years, so it's not like it's a new concept. But he is a middle schooler. And part of, I live in Crystal City, I work in Crystal City, I'm sort of working the dream. There's an element of living the dream, but sort of transforming this lifestyle where he can now walk to school. He has a whole other set of freedoms. He's a preteen. He's gonna be, 13 on June 22nd. And so when I pick him up from school, yesterday, bike to work day, I didn't get to bike because I felt like, to bike 2 buildings over was just a little bit of a ruse, So, we got on our bikes and we did the Arlington Loop, which was almost 20 miles. So I got to spend time with him. And then I have a lot of my work is evening events. And so he's here, he's safe, he can go grab himself dinner at Noodles or one of his favorite places. And so he has the kind of freedoms that I had as a kid that most kids in inner city living don't have anymore, because of the overprotective of this, of that. And, he's part of this community who actually watches out for him, which is great. But I really think that that's important for him. It's important for us. It's important for how we spend time together and interact, but also for just sort of his growth as well.
Yep. Luckily, we're allowed.
I was going to say, keep going. You can just
You can hold that if you want.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll just keep it like that. I'm more comfortable this way.
Time out. Full service Scott.
Yeah, Scott, our engineer, fix it.
Can I ask a question while we're waiting for this? How many people here live in Arlington? And then the opposite, how many people don't live in Arlington? So kind of 50-50. Wow. How many people have heard of WeWork before this? And how many of you have been to WeWork before this? Oh, good. Well, welcome. Great you're here.
How many of you have participated in Crystal City events sort of in the community, like a 5K or the farmer's market or?
You're one today?
Yeah. Single stumble.
How come you don't still have to go to medal anymore? Yeah. It was like 3 years.
How many other children live in WeLive?
So interestingly enough, so Tatton was, I thought maybe the only kid living here, but one of his schoolmates actually lives at WeLive as well. So there are 2 teenagers. I think he has a cousin who's in high school who lives here as well. So that's really it on the kid front. But it's, this is still the first neighborhood. This is still sort of their initial test. So it'll be interesting to see. I did see a mother touring today as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that rolls out.
Can we have a hand for Scott for the battery?
Well done. We were talking about this article earlier from the New Yorker that was saying, a lot of companies have these aspirations of a kind of work, smaller, live space. And many of them are being described as kind of like a dorm feel or a dorm room, college dorm room feel. Do you all agree with that statement? Do you like that or disagree?
Well, I think that whenever you're doing something that's innovative and disruptive, people don't have an exact reference point to understand that. And so they go to the reference point that they can come up with. And when you say there's shared living and shared spaces, people think, I guess that's like a dorm. But hopefully you get a sense from how we're talking about it, and you'll get a sense as we walk around that it's really nothing like that. In a dorm, at least in my dorm experience, I had a room and a roommate and a bunk bed and a desk, and then the bathrooms were shared, and all that kind of stuff. Here, you have a full apartment, whether it's small or large, depending on what size apartment you take. You have your own TV, kitchen, etc. But then you have these amazing sort of amenities that you wouldn't have access to otherwise, like this really gorgeous chef's kitchen, or this incredible screening room, or a yoga and wellness room. That just those are kind of bonuses, the shared spaces. So it's very the dorm thing's not a good point of reference, but I understand why people do it.
Yeah, I would agree. It certainly was not a dorm that I was ever in. I don't think my first dorm was even air conditioned. But no, it feels like an apartment, except where people are actually trying to get to know each other. When I first moved to Washington, I lived in a garden apartment over on Columbia Pike, and I did not know who my neighbors were. Everyone was in, out, doors closed all the time. And in here, it's like I really do feel like who is living here, and that we're all sort of in this together in a way, but then we all have our own lives, and I don't know what every single person does. And people say, well, how many people live there? And I'm like, I can't answer that question. And that's not really why I'm here to do this, is to know all the stats inside and out. But I do know that I really like the people that I've met so far, and that it is, it's a community sense. It's an asset-light sense. There's sort of a life path feeling to it, but definitely not a dorm.
Dave, WeWork, very successful. Everyone here knew about it. Why did WeWork decide to get into WeLive? Seems like you were a fast-growing company with that on its own. Why the two?
Yeah, we've got these 2 really visionary founders, the 2 guys who started the company, and interestingly, it was always about this idea of we, And Workspace was the one that they were able to sort of express and build that business first. But the idea of we, in a we generation is sort of a term that we use a lot in our internal conversations. That idea of, people who are kind of on this journey and want to connect and sort of live their life around the vision and values of community, that could be expressed in our, our living spaces or our workspaces. So those two ideas were kind of always there. Both Miguel and Adam grew up in kind of communal living contexts. Adam lived in a kibbutz in Israel, and Miguel lived in some sort of hippie community in Portland, Oregon. And my words, not his. And so those are really deeply held sort of values and kind of perspectives on life. And everybody's really excited that now we're sort of able to introduce the living part as well.
Talk about, obviously, WeLive is a really revolutionary concept for cities. Where do you both see city living being in another 5 years, in another 10 years?
I think the idea of people being having smaller personal space is sort of not just a trend. I mean, I think we spent a world with big furniture and a lot of things to carry around with us, and it's nice to feel a little bit lighter. And I think just people living closer to one another, there's where a lot of ideas and concepts happen, and since certainly that's in the innovative space. We're trying to have companies meet other companies, and you can do that both on the working space and also in the living space. So I definitely see smaller and smaller sort of personal space and more community space. And I don't know that they would have the amazing architecture that the WeWork team always has, whether it's work or live, but I certainly see that as a trend increasing.
I don't know, I'm not an urbanist, so I don't really have I I believe that, like Angie said, this focus on experiences and connection is not a trend. I think that's a real thing. I think it's something that sort of the millennial generation especially embodies and espouses, but I'm not a millennial. I know you think I am, but I'm not. And so it's not unique to sort of that generation, and I don't think it's going away.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And just from a purely Crystal City standpoint, so much of our development, we have older architecture that is being turned into residential. We have infill architecture that is more residential, and there are 1,000 new units coming online within this year right on East Street alone. So there's more and more multifamily. So certainly that is definitely where the developers and others see this going.
The answer, the question is, if you want to buy in for longer than a month, can you do that? And presumably then, can you get a benefit for doing that? And the answer is yes to both. So if people want to, make agreements for 6 months or a year, we certainly do that, and there's a little bit of benefit on pricing. So we're fine with that. We just want to give people, the flexibility, because these communities are benefit from heterogeneity. And so if you have people coming, you have that visiting professor, and you have this grad student who's here from, Italy, and you have people who are in the community already, and folks that are coming from different parts of the U.S. It just it allows for more variety built in, don't you think?
As well as the whole Crystal City, the defense contractors have flexibility, the consultants, a lot of different options that normally would not be afforded to them unless they went with either a furnished studio, but again, that's the close the door model, or they get some aspect of social community living in addition to really amazing workspace or low space.
I think that idea, it's also a huge differentiator. If you think about the costs of the traditional sort of decision you make about where to live, one of those costs is the loss of flexibility in your life. And we're able to kind of give that back to people. Someone else was going to.
Is the building fully occupied now?
No. We just opened really. So this space, the WeWork space, there are 2 floors of WeWork here, which is about 425 desks or something like that. And we are about 85% occupied. That opened in February, so just a few months ago. WeLive, we really just opened May 1st. You'll see, hopefully you're going to join us and walk around for a tour, and you'll see we have these groupings of 3 floors that are connected by interior staircases, and each of those 3-floor groupings we refer to as a neighborhood. So we open them one neighborhood at a time, and the first neighborhood is about 85% full, and when we're just as we wrap that up, then we'll open the next neighborhood. But we haven't actually opened the second and third neighborhoods yet.
Any other questions, comments, feedback? Tub, no tub?
I have a question, which is, For how many people here is your understanding of WeLive different than what you thought coming in the door? Everybody else kind of knew what it was coming in? Interesting. Awesome. Yeah, I'll ask this again down in the lobby.
I think you mentioned something, some of the perks, right? Is the free booze for just WeWork, or is that for WeLive? Because I feel like, do you know, DC? I mean, you're gonna go broke on the alcohol. I'm concerned for you. These millennials are drunks here. Like, everyone's an alcoholic. Honestly, this could be an AA. I'll start.
Everybody asked the question about what happens when you have kegs available and stuff like that. Virginia law, actually, we don't have kegs that are just open all the time like we do in many of our buildings, so that might cause a few people to get up and leave. But you know, the truth is that this is a community that sort of like is totally filtered for people who are ambitious and who are doers and who are focused and are on this sort of journey of self-actualization and trying to find, you know, they're just not sitting around sort of knocking them back. I mean, you know, they know there's a time for that, and that is that sort of social life piece is part of kind of what happens here. But really, this is people who are trying to kind of chase dreams and sort of, you know, shape the world.
Good luck with that, Dave. These people drink and go to work. Okay.
That's allowed.
Did you have one other question? Did you want to ask a second? Yeah, go for it.
Are you guys going to be offering at all, kind of off the feedback off the other question over here, any sort of condo type arrangements or strictly only rental foreseeable?
I really thought you were going to ask a question about the booze.
Oh no, I already know your answer to that.
The question is, are we going to offer, you know, ownership options like condo kind of thing, right? The answer is no. That's not really the model. You know, everything is iterative, so like I guess there's a universe that could happen, but it's not. That's not the way we see it. Yeah.
So I know this is repetitious, but so not a co-op model either.
Correct. Right.
Because that would fit with us.
Yeah, but you know, I think the idea of sort of growing a big business and a fast-growing business is to kind of have a model that scales, and co-ops present a lot of different complexities. I think that might not sort of, you know, allow that, because one of the things that we see is by building a really big, strong business, we're able to invest in community at a much greater rate. So a couple things happen because of the size of the business and the rate of growth of the business. One is we have more data points. You know, because we have 90 buildings, not 3 buildings, we're just learning more faster. And so all of that kind of accrues back to the members and the members' experience and sort of the value that they derive from whether it's WeWork or WeLive. So, you know, we want to have a model that really allows us to keep growing at that rate and sort of expanding the size, because with critical mass comes more and more learning and more ability to invest back in the member experience. Yeah.
Speaking of learning, I read an article that you guys had some employees and maybe volunteers go to the New York version of this before you launch into the public. Were there any really fun stories about what it was like, or I don't know, what did you learn from that experiment?
Well, so it's true that, you know, we basically went to our employees and said, we're about to open sort of the beta floors of the beta WeWork, and we want to offer it to you, especially in Manhattan where the cost of living is so high. We want to, you know, give you a chance to come and live here at a fraction of the cost, and you guys will be the beta users, and you know, we'll have a really tight feedback loop in terms of what we learn. You know, were there great stories? I didn't live there, so I can't be repeating second and third hand things. Yeah, what happens at WeLive stays at WeLive. You know, I think we did learn a ton, and we've done that here too, where some of our employees in the DC market, you know, were among the first people to move in, and it's awesome. It's just really the spirit of kind of collaborative learning and all that, and it does make for a richer product and a faster feedback loop and so forth.
2 questions. One, after Lower Manhattan, what were the criteria that led you to Crystal City? 2, are there restrictions on subleasing your unit at WeLive?
Yeah, we were looking for a neighborhood with a lot of beige buildings. And, this one showed up. You know, there are a few things about Crystal City, I would say, to Angie's credit and the credit of many people in the room and many people not in the room. you know, it's a neighborhood that has a great sort of resurgence of energy, and we, you know, see that and value that and want to be part of that. It's also a neighborhood where the people are invested, and so they're great partners, and that's really important to us. But then also, if you have this sort of learning culture mindset of, you know, we're gonna try a couple of beta projects and we're gonna hopefully do a great job, but we're also gonna learn at a really rapid rate, then it doesn't really make sense to put both of those in the same environment. You know, so if you put one in downtown Manhattan, you want to put the other one in an environment that is different. It gives you sort of a different set of learnings, and certainly, you know, this is a contrasting environment. So those are kind of the reasons. There are many things here that we believe in and are bullish about, and but those are a few of the reasons. In terms of subleasing, you know, the answer is no, it's not allowed, and it's really not necessary because these are primarily month-to-month agreements. So there's really no, you know, nobody's really getting stuck here in a way that you might if you signed a long-term lease at another building.
Anybody else before we start our tour? Good? Okay. Dave, Angela, thank you so much. You guys were great. Please make a suggestion, and I just want to thank again ARLnow.com. Definitely check out their website. Amazing.